So another important topic to discuss before we get started is to understand which version of Python are we using. So are we using Python 2.7.x or Python 3.x, say Python 3.5 or Python 3.6. So in a nutshell, we can clearly say that Python 2.x is legacy and Python 3.x is the present and the future of the language. So it makes it very obvious. Why do we even consider Python 2.x? It's just obvious that we should consider 3.x for every practical thing that we do. There's a small trade-off over here. Before we look into the details and differences, some background. So while Python was getting very popular, there were a couple of trade-offs in the original language's compilers and the construction of the entire module. Now, the founders of this language actually thought before before launching a huge version that is Python 3.x, there are some core changes that they need to bring around in Python. Now, if they bring these core changes, it would have limited backward compatibility. It is important to do so because since the language is expanding and becoming popular at a different scale, it needed a couple of things fixed at the core and at the fundamental level before making a big leap forward. So that's why when Python 3.x was launched, there was no backward compatibility. It brought in few fundamental changes in the syntax, just a few. The most important change actually came in the print function and a few functions over here and there. Overall, I would say there's a huge overlap in the syntax and the format with minor changes between the two, but the problem becomes internal. So the packages or the third-party modules which supported Python 2.7 had actually supposed to be rewritten for Python 3.x because of the small syntactical and internal changes. So this support progress was actually limited for Python 3.x. So today, probably every package you use will have support for Python 2.7, and they might not necessarily have support for Python 3.x. So that is a problem. But then, coming to the differences, as we already mentioned, Python 2.7 has more number of libraries. It has extensive third-party support module, but then it has no major new releases. So the last version which we have seen in Python 2.7 was Python 2.7.12. Similarly, if you look for Python 3.x, so we have today the most popular one as 3.5. It's cutting edge. All new features have been added to Python 3 onwards. It's got limited third-party module support. So compared to Python 2.7, not all packages available over here have actually transitioned to 3.x, but then they are under transition. And it is under active development. So all new features, extensive rollouts are all happening under Python 3.x. So the question is, should we consider learning Python 2.7 or 3.x? Though there are only small differences from our level, I would recommend that we insist to learn Python 3.x. A few reasons. Most of the packages that we deal with in machine learning and data science have actually transitioned from Python 2.7 to 3.x. So we don't generally face a lot of issues when we work with Python 3.x, but then some teams might actually face. This actually comes into picture when, let's say, you're developing a large-scale application for a real-time company which needs to get deployed into a production support system. And in that production environment, there are a couple of packages which the team might be using, which might not be available for Python 3.x and are right now only available for Python 2.7. That might be a problem. But for most of them, for us at least for this entire module, we won't face any issues using Python 3.x. And anyways, since it is the present and the future of the language, I would highly recommend you to get started with Python 3.x.